Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever felt the sting of being overlooked? That quiet ache when someone who once celebrated your presence now treats you like background noise? We've all been there, but the question isn't what they did. The real question is, why does it hurt so much when someone no longer values us? You see, at the heart of human connection is the need to be seen, to be heard, to be acknowledged. It's not vanity, it's biology. We are wired for belonging, and when that belonging is threatened, our confidence can crumble. But here's the twist. The problem isn't their opinion. It's that we start believing it. Today, I want to offer you a simple shift. A trick, yes, but one rooted in purpose and self-worth. One that flips the narrative and reminds you of something powerful. You never needed their permission to be valuable. Let's talk about what happens when, instead of chasing their approval, you choose something radically different. Your value isn't dependent on someone else's recognition. That's not just a reassuring quote. It's a powerful truth that can shift the way you live your life, the way you build relationships, and the way you see yourself. The reason this truth is often hard to accept is because we've grown up in systems that constantly tie our worth to outcomes, feedback, and external validation. From school grades to performance reviews, from likes on social media to compliments from others, we are conditioned to seek approval as a measure of our importance. So, when someone in our life stops valuing us, it can feel like our worth has diminished. But that's a dangerous illusion. The real issue isn't that someone no longer appreciates us. The issue is that we start questioning our own significance based on their changed behavior. We start wondering, did I do something wrong? Am I not enough anymore? But let's be clear. When someone stops valuing you, it says more about their perception than your reality. Their inability to recognize your worth doesn't take it away. Their silence, their indifference, or their distance doesn't shrink your light. It only reveals where they stopped looking. Think of a painting. The Mona Lisa is arguably one of the most valuable works of art in the world. Now imagine someone walking past it in a gallery, barely giving it a glance. Maybe they don't care for art. Maybe they're distracted. Maybe they just don't get the appeal. Does that change the painting's value? Not even slightly. The Mona Lisa doesn't need your attention to be a masterpiece, and neither do you. When you tie your worth to how someone else treats you, you give them power over your identity. You let their moods, their choices, and their inconsistencies determine how you feel about yourself. That's a dangerous kind of dependence, because it puts your emotional well-being in someone else's hands. And often, those hands are not steady. The truth is, people change, circumstances change, priorities shift. Sometimes, someone who once valued you may become distracted, overwhelmed, or caught up in their own journey. And while it's okay to feel hurt by that, it's not okay to let it redefine your self-worth. Your value existed before they noticed you. It exists after they forget you, and it will still exist whether or not they ever return to acknowledge it. Here's something else to consider. When you know your worth, you naturally attract relationships and environments that reflect it. But when you doubt your worth, you settle for those that question it. And the more you chase people who don't see your value, the more you begin to believe you're invisible. That's not humility, that's self-abandonment. Now, does that mean you should stop caring altogether? Not at all. We are human. We are meant to connect, to feel, to hope. It's okay to care. But there is a difference between caring and collapsing. You can care about someone and still walk away when they no longer treat you with respect. You can be kind and still have boundaries. You can love someone deeply and still choose yourself when they no longer value your presence. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's self-preserving. It's the recognition that your energy, your love, and your time are not things to be wasted trying to convince someone of what they once saw clearly. You don't need to beg for a seat at a table you helped build, and you don't need to shrink so someone else can feel comfortable ignoring your greatness. When you stop needing validation from others to feel valuable, you take back control. You begin to live from a place of inner certainty, not outer approval, and that kind of confidence is magnetic. People can sense it, and those who are truly meant for your life will be drawn to it, not because you demand it, but because you embody it. So the next time someone stops valuing you, don't panic, don't chase, don't beg. Instead, pause, breathe, and remind yourself, my value doesn't fluctuate based on someone else's inability to see it. You are not optional. You are not replaceable, and you are certainly not dependent on temporary attention to prove lasting worth. You are enough, always have been, always will be. Distance reveals what presence once hid. That may sound poetic, but it's one of the most practical truths we often overlook in relationships. When we're close to someone, emotionally, mentally, or even physically, we tend to see them through a lens shaped by comfort, familiarity, and emotion. Their flaws might blur. Their neglect might feel like an off day. We excuse things, rationalize behaviors, and often minimize the signs that something isn't right. But the moment distance enters the picture, when space is created, whether by choice or circumstance, clarity begins to surface. What was once hidden in the noise of constant interaction becomes unmistakably loud in the silence. When someone no longer values you, your first instinct might be to move closer, to ask more questions, to try harder, to do whatever it takes to regain their attention or approval. But sometimes the wisest move is to take a step back, not out of spite, not out of anger, but out of a desire for truth, because here's what distance does. It strips away the illusion. When you stop texting first, when you stop initiating every conversation, when you stop carrying the emotional weight of the relationship, the reality begins to reveal itself. You see who checks in when you go quiet. You see who notices your absence, not just your presence. You learn who values you when you're not in front of them doing the work of keeping the connection alive. In that silence, answers come that words never could. You realize whether the connection was mutual or one-sided, whether they miss you for who you are or just for what you do, and often you discover that you were holding together something that would have fallen apart long ago if not for your constant effort. Distance doesn't create problems, it reveals them. It's the test that shows whether the foundation was solid or if it only looked that way when everything was being held up by your emotional labor. Sometimes, stepping back exposes how lonely you truly were, even while standing next to them. And that realization, though painful, is a gift, because it invites you to stop pretending. But there's another side to this truth. Distance doesn't just reveal others, it reveals you. When you remove yourself from a situation where you feel undervalued, you begin to hear your own voice more clearly. You get in touch with what you want, what you need, and what you've been tolerating. You start to differentiate between love and attachment, between being needed and being respected. You may find that you were holding on not because the relationship was good, but because you feared being alone. You may uncover parts of yourself that were lost in trying to please someone else. You begin to reawaken confidence, creativity, and peace that had been quietly pushed aside to make room for someone who never really saw you. Here's the powerful part. When you allow space, you no longer chase closure. You become it. You stop needing long explanations or dramatic exits. You recognize that how someone responds to your absence is the answer. If they let you go without effort, without curiosity, without care, that says more than any apology ever could. And if they return, but only when they feel the shift in your energy, you'll know they were motivated more by control than connection. That clarity gives you power to choose better, power to walk away with your dignity intact, power to stop begging for scraps of attention from someone who once feasted on your loyalty. You begin to realize that relationships aren't proven in the presence of good times but in the absence of effort. Who shows up when you stop showing up? That's the question. And if the answer is no one, take heart. Not because you were easy to leave, but because you were brave enough to pause. Brave enough to seek truth over comfort. brave enough to create space, not to be chased, but to find yourself again. So the next time you feel the urge to close the gap, to fix what feels broken, consider this: maybe the distance isn't the problem. Maybe it's the mirror, and maybe, just maybe, it's reflecting exactly what you need to see, not to hurt you, but to free you. Because sometimes it's only in stepping away that we finally see what's real, what's missing, and most importantly, what we truly deserve. Silence is a powerful mirror. Use it wisely. In a world where people often talk just to fill space, silence becomes one of the most revealing tools you can use. It's not just the absence of sound or words, it's the presence of truth. It's in silence that intentions become clear, that patterns speak louder than promises, and that you learn who is truly connected to you beyond what you say or do. When someone stops valuing you, the first instinct may be to talk, to explain, to defend yourself, to try and salvage what's slipping away. But often, the most powerful response isn't a perfectly worded message or a passionate plea, it's silence. Not the kind that punishes, but the kind that listens, watches, and waits. Because in silence, people show themselves. Silence is uncomfortable for many because it removes distractions. It puts the focus back on behavior. When you stop chasing, stop explaining, stop filling every gap with your energy, something interesting happens. People are left with only their own reflection. If someone values you, they'll notice the silence. They'll feel it, they'll want to understand it. But if they don't, they'll use it as an excuse to walk further away. Because it was never about connection, only convenience. The beauty of silence is that it creates space for truth, for clarity, for self-respect. In that space, the games stop. There's no more performance, no more illusion. People can no longer hide behind charm or sweet words. You stop being distracted by what they say and start seeing what they do. And their actions, or lack of them, become your answers. Sometimes silence is the reset button you didn't know you needed. It's a chance to withdraw your emotional investment and ask yourself, what am I really getting from this? Is this connection nourishing or draining me? These questions can only be answered in stillness. Because when you're constantly reacting, constantly engaged, you don't give yourself the chance to reflect. And without reflection, it's easy to lose yourself in someone else's inconsistency. But silence is not just about observing others. It's also about coming home to yourself. In silence, you reconnect with your own needs, your own desires, your own voice. It's where healing begins. When you stop trying to prove your worth to someone else, you start remembering it for yourself. You stop rehearsing conversations that will never happen, and instead begin having the most important one, the one with yourself. People often fear silence because they think it means weakness. They think it means giving up or walking away, but in truth, silence is strength. It's the ability to pause instead of react, to choose dignity over desperation, to let go without creating a scene. It takes far more courage to stay silent and let someone reveal their priorities than to fight for a connection that's already unbalanced. There's a quiet power in being still. It's the kind of power that doesn't need to shout to be heard, the kind that doesn't beg for attention but earns respect. Silence says, I'm no longer playing a role in your story that costs me my peace. It sets a boundary without raising your voice. It speaks of self-worth without needing to argue. It's not withdrawal out of spite, it's withdrawal out of self-awareness. And if someone doesn't respond to your silence, not with curiosity, not with concern, not with effort, then you've learned something essential. You've learned that your presence was never really seen, that your value was conditional, and that your voice, no matter how loud or soft, was never going to change what they weren't willing to hear. So let your silence speak. Let it echo through the space they once occupied. Let it reflect the truth of the situation, because those who truly care won't be silent for long. They'll reach out, they'll ask. They'll show up, and if they don't, you'll already be standing in a place of peace, not because you didn't care, but because you finally chose to care for yourself more. Silence is not about ending the conversation. It's about shifting it, from proving your worth to honoring it, from chasing answers to listening for truth, and from trying to be heard by someone else to finally hearing yourself. Use it wisely, and it will never lead you wrong. When respect fades, boundaries must rise. This isn't about revenge, ego, or cutting people off in anger. It's about self-preservation. Respect is the foundation of every healthy relationship, whether it's romantic, professional, or platonic. Without it, love becomes manipulation, friendship becomes convenience, and communication becomes control. When someone begins to show less respect for you, through their words, their actions, or their silence, it's a signal, not a mistake. It's the moment to stop making excuses and start protecting your peace. At first, the signs might be subtle. They interrupt more often. They dismiss your feelings. They take your time for granted. They stop acknowledging your efforts. You tell yourself it's stress or a bad week or that you're being too sensitive, but deep down you feel the shift, and yet because you care you stay, you explain, you overextend, you shrink your expectations hoping to maintain the connection. But respect, once lost, rarely returns without consequence, and your silence in the face of disrespect slowly teaches them that it's acceptable. This is where boundaries become essential. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They're gates that control what and who gets access to your energy. They define what you allow, what you tolerate, and where you draw the line between love and self-neglect. When respect begins to fade, boundaries remind both you and others, this is who I am, and this is what I will no longer accept. Boundaries are not selfish, they are necessary. They are a declaration that your needs, your feelings, and your time matter. And they are especially critical when someone begins to treat you as an option, a convenience, or a backup plan. If you don't set the boundary, you become complicit in your own disrespect. You start playing the role of the person who's always available, always forgiving, always understanding, even when it comes at the cost of your self-worth. It's important to recognize that people will only treat you as poorly as you allow. The more chances you give without accountability, the more someone will assume you'll tolerate anything. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself and even for the other person is to stop allowing the behavior to continue unchecked. Because without consequences, behavior doesn't change. Without boundaries, respect doesn't return. Raising boundaries is not a punishment. It's a message. I value myself enough to step away from what devalues me. It's choosing your emotional safety over the illusion of closeness. And while it may come with discomfort, people may resist, question, or even guilt you, it's worth it. Because any connection that falls apart in the presence of healthy boundaries wasn't a healthy connection to begin with. You don't need to explain your boundaries to everyone. Some people won't understand, and that's okay. Your peace doesn't need universal approval. What matters is that you understand why you're doing it. You're doing it because you're tired of walking on eggshells, because you're tired of waiting to be respected, because you finally realize that being needed is not the same as being valued. Respect begins with how you treat yourself. When you raise your boundaries in the face of fading respect, you are sending a powerful message to the world. I will not lower my standards for temporary comfort. You stop being accessible to those who use you. You stop being emotionally available to those who are emotionally careless. And you stop seeking love in places where only control and inconsistency live. Yes, setting boundaries may cause some people to leave. But those are not your people. The right ones will adjust. They will step up. They will meet you where you are, not ask you to shrink back down, because real respect grows in the presence of clear boundaries, not in their absence. So when you notice respect fading, don't explain it away. Don't chase it. Don't try to earn it back through overgiving. Pause, observe, and respond with strength, not desperation. Let your boundaries rise, not to push others away, but to hold yourself in. To protect the version of you that finally knows they deserve more. Respect isn't begged for, it's earned. And once it's lost, only boundaries can determine whether the relationship still deserves space in your life. Let them rise, and watch your life begin to shift toward peace, purpose, and people who truly see you. Reclaim your energy from those who drain it. This might be one of the most important acts of self-respect you will ever take. We often give our time, attention, and emotional resources to people out of love, loyalty, or hope. And while those motives are understandable, even admirable, there comes a point when you have to ask yourself, asterisk at what cost? Asterisk because if you're constantly exhausted, emotionally depleted, or second, guessing your worth around someone, it's time to pause and reevaluate where your energy is going, and why. Energy isn't just about physical stamina. It's emotional, mental, and spiritual. It's the life force you bring into your day, your relationships, and your goals. When someone drains your energy, it's not always through dramatic conflict. Sometimes it's subtle. It's in the way they never ask how you're doing, yet expect you to listen to their every complaint. It's in the way they demand your attention but rarely offer support. It's in the imbalance where you're always giving, and they're always taking. At first you might not even notice it. You brush off your exhaustion, tell yourself you're just being kind, or that they need you. But over time, the signs become harder to ignore. You start dreading conversations with them. You feel mentally foggy after every interaction. You begin sacrificing your peace just to keep the connection alive. That's not love, that's not friendship, that's emotional self-neglect. Reclaiming your energy starts with awareness. Who in your life leaves you feeling lighter, seen, and inspired? And who leaves you feeling anxious, small, or drained? This doesn't make them bad people, but it does mean that their presence in your life requires boundaries. Because every time you invest your energy into someone who only takes from you, you're borrowing against your own well-being. And sooner or later, the debt shows up in stress, burnout, resentment, or even physical illness. There's a myth that loving someone means endless sacrifice, but true love, true connection, doesn't feel like constant depletion. It's reciprocal. It nurtures both sides. When you reclaim your energy, you're not being cold or heartless. You're simply refusing to abandon yourself for the comfort of others. You are choosing to preserve the energy you need to grow, to heal, to be present for people who truly appreciate you. This doesn't mean cutting people off abruptly or with cruelty. It means making quiet but firm decisions. Maybe it's reducing how often you engage. Maybe it's choosing not to respond immediately to every message. Maybe it's stepping away completely from relationships that have shown no signs of respect, empathy, or mutual effort. It's not about revenge, it's about recovery. Reclaiming your energy also means taking responsibility for your own patterns. Ask yourself, asterisk, why did I give so much? What did I hope to gain? Asterisk, sometimes we overgive because we're seeking validation. We want to be seen as good, loyal, or irreplaceable. But when your worth is tied to how much you do for others, you leave yourself vulnerable to being used. Your energy is sacred. It fuels your creativity, your peace, your clarity. And when you spend too much of it trying to keep relationships alive that are rooted in imbalance, you rob yourself of the energy needed to build a life that actually fulfills you. Imagine what you could do with the time and mental space you waste worrying about people who wouldn't even notice if you stopped trying. Reclaiming your energy is not a one-time decision. It's a daily practice. It's checking in with yourself and asking, asterisk, does this conversation bring me peace or tension? Does this person lift me up or weigh me down? Asterisk, and being willing to act on the answers even when it's hard. You have a right to protect your space. You have a right to walk away from people who consistently leave you feeling empty. And you have a right to choose yourself, not because you're selfish, but because you finally understand that your energy is not unlimited. It's a resource that deserves to be invested in people, places, and purposes that give something meaningful in return. So take a deep breath, release the guilt, reclaim your energy. Not everyone deserves access to it, and that's not cruelty. That's wisdom, because when you stop pouring into people who drain you, you begin to refill the most important person in your life. You asterisk. Reclaiming your energy from those who drain it is one of the most transformative choices you can make, not just for your peace of mind, but for your entire way of living. Too often, we stay connected to people out of habit, guilt, or the illusion of loyalty. We keep giving, keep showing up, keep absorbing their chaos, hoping that at some point they'll give back. But energy, unlike time, is not just about quantity, it's about quality. And if you're constantly investing your energy in relationships that leave you emotionally bankrupt, you're not being loving, you're being depleted. Some people in your life don't mean to drain you. They're not necessarily toxic in the loud, dramatic way we often imagine. They don't yell or criticize. Instead, they take subtly, with expectations, with guilt, tripping, with never-ending stories about their own problems while never asking about yours, with emotional dependency disguised as connection. And because you care, you feel obligated to stay, to listen, to help. But caring about someone doesn't mean sacrificing your mental clarity and emotional health. It's important to realize that not everyone deserves unlimited access to your energy. Your compassion should not become your prison. Just because someone is in crisis or always needs something doesn't mean you are the one who has to fix it. Helping others is a beautiful thing, but not at the cost of abandoning yourself. There's a thin line between empathy and enmeshment, and too many people cross it without even realizing it, until they feel exhausted, irritable, and strangely resentful. Reclaiming your energy starts with recognizing where it's leaking. Who do you think about all the time even when they're not around? Who makes you anxious every time your phone buzzes with their name? Who causes your mood to drop after every interaction? These aren't just coincidences. These are indicators. Your body and mind are telling you something your heart may not want to admit. This connection is costing you something valuable. And here's the hard truth. If you don't protect your energy, no one else will. The people who constantly rely on your emotional labor have no incentive to stop if you continue giving freely. They're not necessarily malicious. They're just used to you being the one who always shows up. So when you finally start saying no, or take a step back, they may push back. They may question you, guilt you, or make you feel like the problem. That's okay. Let them. It's not your job to manage other people's discomfort with your boundaries. Reclaiming your energy also means becoming deeply honest with yourself. Ask, why did I give so much in the first place? Was it to be liked, to feel useful, to avoid conflict? Often, we overextend ourselves because deep down, we fear what will happen if we stop. We worry people will leave, criticize us, or worse, prove that they were only around because of what we could do for them. But if someone disappears when you stop overgiving, that's not a loss, that's a revelation. There's something liberating about no longer being someone's emotional crutch, about not absorbing the moods, projections, or complaints of people who refuse to take responsibility for their own healing. Your energy is meant for your purpose, your growth, your peace. It's not meant to be endlessly drained by people who refuse to fill themselves. You don't owe constant access to anyone who doesn't respect the cost of your attention. Begin to redirect that energy inward. Use it to reconnect with what you love. Use it to rest, to create, to breathe again without the weight of someone else's drama on your shoulders. You'll be surprised at how much more vibrant life feels when you stop pouring into those who only take. And this isn't about becoming cold or uncaring. It's about recognizing that love isn't just about giving. It's about knowing when to stop. It's about understanding that relationships should be reciprocal. That your role in someone's life is not to fix them, carry them, or constantly sacrifice your well-being for theirs. True connection feels like support, not obligation. It energizes you, it inspires you. It does not leave you emotionally empty. So reclaim your energy, piece by piece. Every no you say to someone who drains you is a yes to yourself. Every boundary you set is an act of healing. Every moment you spend away from chaos is a moment you gain clarity. You're not selfish, you're self-aware, and the people who truly love you will celebrate that awareness, not punish it. Let this be the season where you stop bleeding energy for those who wouldn't even notice if you were gone. Start investing it in the only person who will never leave you, yourself. Growth begins the moment you stop begging and start choosing. There comes a point in every person's life when they must make a decision, not about someone else, but about themselves. It's the turning point where you stop trying to convince others to see your worth, to stay in your life, to treat you right. It's when you stop performing for love and start standing in your truth. Because growth doesn't happen when everything is perfect. It happens when you decide you've had enough of shrinking. Begging doesn't always look like dropping to your knees in desperation. Sometimes it looks like over-explaining. It looks like texting first every time, trying to be low maintenance, laughing at things that hurt, or staying quiet just to keep the peace. It looks like accepting crumbs while calling it love. But underneath it all is one silent, painful truth. Asterisk, you're asking someone else to give you what you haven't yet given yourself. Permission to matter. Asterisk, when you live in that space, you're stuck in a cycle of proving. You believe if you just do enough, love enough, give enough, they'll finally see your value. But people don't value what they don't choose, and the harder you try to earn their attention, the more you send the message that your worth depends on their approval. That's not empowerment, that's captivity. Real growth begins when you stop chasing someone else's affection and start asking yourself why you ever had to chase it in the first place. When you look in the mirror and say, asterisk, I don't need to be chosen by someone else to choose myself. Asterisk, that's when everything changes. That's when you stop begging for a seat at someone else's table and begin building your own. You become less concerned with who's walking away and more focused on who you're becoming in the process. Choosing yourself isn't about bitterness or resentment. It's not about proving people wrong. It's about no longer needing to prove anything at all. It's the peace that comes with no longer tying your identity to someone else's attention. It's deciding that you are whole, even if others don't recognize it, even if they leave, even if they never apologize. When you stop begging and start choosing, your standards shift. You no longer accept one-sided effort, delayed replies, or emotional inconsistency. You stop romanticizing confusion and calling it mystery. You stop holding on to people who treat you like an afterthought, hoping one day they'll wake up and realize what they had. Because by then, you'll have already moved on, not out of anger, but out of alignment. Growth means you no longer try to revive connections that drained you. You stop explaining your boundaries to those who repeatedly violate them. You no longer tolerate lukewarm love or temporary loyalty. You stop asking questions like, why don't they love me? And start asking, why am I still here? That question changes everything, because it shifts the focus from asterisk, them asterisk, to asterisk, you asterisk, to your power, your patterns, and your path forward. And yes, it's painful. Walking away from people you care about always is, especially when you've built your identity around being there for them, fixing them, or waiting for them to grow. But growth isn't painless, it's necessary. It's the cost of evolution, And sometimes the price of peace is letting go of people who were only meant to be part of your survival, not your expansion. When you start choosing yourself, your world starts to open. You begin to attract people who see your light without you having to dim it. You begin to build a life that reflects your worth, not just your wounds. You find love that doesn't feel like chasing, and connection that doesn't come at the cost of your dignity. You realize that begging was never about love. It was about fear. And the moment you choose yourself is the moment fear begins to lose its grip. So if someone no longer values you, don't beg them to stay. Don't fight for a place in their life when they've shown you the door. Walk through it, not in bitterness, but in bravery, not to hurt them, but to heal yourself. Because the most powerful move you can make is to stop waiting for someone to choose you, and start choosing the life, the peace, and the love you deserve. That's where growth lives. That's where your next chapter begins.